Tropical storm Anna has left a trail of destruction across Malawi, Mozambique and Madagascar, with reports of deaths there sitting now at 80 people. Thousands more have been displaced, with concerns growing more and more about tropical systems hitting the southern parts of Africa in the future. For more on this, we're joined by the University of the Free State Center for Environmental Management, Dr. Anthony Turton. Good evening and thank you very much for your time, Dr. Anthony. What is the likelihood of the southern part of the African continent being hit by intense tropical cyclones?
Well, Southern Africa, and in particular South Africa, has got a weather system that's driven by three particular drivers, if you like. The one driver is what is known as the Intertropical Convergence Zone, which is the area over the tropics, over the Congo area, Zaire area. The second one is the cold fronts that come off the Southern Ocean that you typically feel in wintertime as frontal rain. But the third thing is called the Indian Ocean Dipole. And the Indian Ocean Dipole is what happens in the Indian Ocean, but it is mirrored by what happens in the Pacific Ocean on the other side of the world. So it's actually part of a global climate system. And even as we speak now with a major event in the Indian Ocean, at exactly the same time, we've got an extremely large event taking place in the Northern Atlantic Ocean that's recently been depositing massive amounts of snow along the east coast of the United States of America. So in short, the global climate patterns are being disturbed, and we're seeing a higher than average type of events taking place in closer proximity to one another.
What's the degree of our vulnerability to these events?
Well, vulnerability is a function of many things. The one thing is that climate is so complex that no individual country or person can do anything about it. Therefore, we are all ultimately dependent on our capacity as a human species to reach consensus that we need to do things differently. And we know with all the politics around climate denialism and all this kind of stuff going on, that it's very difficult to reach consensus like that. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect is our ability as an individual country. So whichever your country you are, Mozambique or Malawi or Zimbabwe, South Africa, to develop some kind of mitigation strategy. But that is mostly a responsive strategy, because all you can do now is you can either forewarn people that something bad's coming their way, and then once it's hit, you've now got to go and pick up the pieces and go on a rescue mission. So it all comes down to the institutional capacity. And unfortunately, in the case of South Africa, we've had a number of these events in the last couple of years of really quite ferocious intensity. And they tend to be hitting in areas, coastal areas, where you don't have very robust infrastructure. So infrastructure is also a mitigating factor. And as our infrastructure is under severe pressure, it's failing. So that also makes our people vulnerable.
Yeah. What can you say about our ability to recover from the devastating climate disasters that, as you put it, we have experienced, particularly in the coastal parts of the country? And what does that say about going forward, when the most likelihood is that these events are going to be coming more frequently with the type of climate change that we are seeing?
Yes, you raise a very interesting thing there, because you see right now we're only talking about the Anna, tropical storm Anna. But of course there are many other things happening at the same time. And right now recently we've had quite a substantial plague of locusts hit the country. That has kind of gone under the radar screen, but that's quite an important event. Then of course we all know about the COVID-19 event, which has damaged all the economies of the globe. And ultimately these things all culminate one on top of the other. And this is what makes a country increasingly non-resilient, if you like. So basically, we're in a situation where typically when you've got a catastrophe or a set of disasters, one thing on top of the other. And in fact, I'll raise another question that was raised by the scientific community in about the 1990s, when this thing was first being modeled. The whole idea of environmental refugees and climate change, and what would the implications be. At that stage, we didn't know what they would be, so we were trying to use our best available evidence to suggest what might happen in the future. And one of those things that was suggested, of course, was the emergence of new forms of pathogens. And one of them that was put on the table as as something of interest or something of concern was malaria. So you must remember, as the climate gets warmer, it also gets wetter, it also gets more energy in the atmosphere, therefore greater intensity of storms. But you also start changing local microclimates. And so you start seeing, for example, the emergence now of malaria in endemic areas where before it wasn't. So these are the type of changes that we need to get our head around. And to do that, we have to have credible scientists speaking about it. But more importantly, we have to have a government that's willing to listen, and we have to be able to deal with the denialists that are constantly chirping on the sideline to say that that the science is rubbish, or the scientists have got an agenda or something of that nature. That doesn't help us at all.
This is the dilemma, though, that we're facing, that the least contributors to this chaos or this climate crisis are the ones who are severely impacted by it, while the developed or the biggest polluters who are committing these significant crimes are the ones who are least affected. How does the developing world bring this to the attention of the developed world so that they catch a wake-up of the impact of their actions?
Well, this is a normal political north-south discourse. This is not a new thing. It's been going on for a long time. But I don't think it's correct to say that the developed north is escaping the wrath of these things. One need look no further than the United States of America, which has been hit by wildfires of unprecedented scale, one after the other, but on massive scale. And if you look also at Australia, which has got serious wildfire types scenarios. So it's not only isolated in Africa, just that in Africa we tend to maybe have less institutional resilience, and it's possible that this is a factor. But ultimately the bottom line is that in the 21st century, the future of humankind is dependent on our collective capacity to cooperate at a very time when our ability to cooperate is becoming increasingly unlikely. So this is a dilemma. It's a philosophical and leadership dilemma for the 21st century in the information age, when we're supposed to have so much information that everyone can know everything about everything, and yet everyone forms an opinion about something over which they actually know very little. Yeah. And this is part of our dilemma in the information age.
What is some of the background work that is being done, state-of-the-art techniques that are being implemented, particularly for early warning signs?
Yes, the early warning stuff is getting very, very much better. You must appreciate that instrumentation is a very important part of this whole thing. And as instrumentation is improving, so our ability to look at complex things in a more accurate way is also improving. Having said that, if we just take this north-south divide that we spoke about a few minutes ago, it's interesting to note that in this major storm event that's currently ravaging the eastern seaboard of the United States of America, up until just before it hit, there were two competing mathematical models that did not say the same thing. So that's not because the science is junk or bad. That's just because it is inherently difficult to model something where you've got hundreds of variables. If this thing goes up and if that thing gets warmer, then that thing gets cooler, and that something else happens and the earth spins here and this happens there. All of these things are causally linked. And that just means that the mathematical modeling is complex, and complexity means that it's inherently unpredictable. So we can do our best to predict, and I think we are getting pretty good at that. But once a storm is formed, then the track of that storm is the unpredictable thing. Will it go slightly east, slightly west? Those kind of variabilities are things that we can't predict with a high level of certainty until, of course, more and more data comes available. It's always about the amount of data that you have. And we're now entering the world of big data, and the world of big data is really enabling us to do some absolutely mind-boggling studies and analyses on this kind of thing that is changing our thinking in a fundamental way. And I can give you some examples if we have time.
Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. Dr. Anthony, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for your interventions here tonight on In Focus.